Hello everyone, I'm Hugo.
And I'm Jake.
And this is Who Cares? We're going to discuss and debate the Doctor on his adventures through space and time.
So prepare yourself for the campiest episode since the Doctor fought the Loch Ness Monster. Seriously, he fought the Loch Ness Monster.
So hello everyone, welcome once again to Who Cares? As I said, I'm Hugo.
And I'm Jake.
And today we are going to be discussing Robots of Sherwood, which was written by Mark Gatiss, and I do have to make a correction from the last episode. I credited him with the episode Nightmare in Silver, which is actually Neil Gaiman. That's my bad. Anyway, we do know that Mark Gatiss wrote this episode though, so at least we know that.
Yeah.
And in this episode, the Doctor comes face to face with one of the legends of English history, that is Robin Hood. Doctor Who's pretty historically accurate, right?
Yeah.
That's where I get my history from.
So we start out in the TARDIS, and basically the Doctor's like, hey, Clara, where would you like to go? Anywhere. And she makes reference to, I really want to see Robin Hood.
So the Doctor, of course, in return says to her, no, Robin Hood isn't real. Why would you think that? Which is a fair point. She is a teacher, an English teacher. You'd think she'd know that Robin Hood isn't supposed to be real, but
yeah, I think more of it's wishful thinking than anything.
I know,
because she prefaces it with like, I know you're gonna say he's not real, but he does it anyway. He kind of humors her. And he's like, okay, and then as soon as he walks out of the TARDIS, what do you know? Robin Hood shoots an arrow at the TARDIS.
Which is impressive, seeing as though the TARDIS is supposed to be indestructible, but an arrow can pierce it.
Well, to be fair, as soon as he pulls it out, the hole clears itself.
I know, but still, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
I'll give you that one, Gatiss. Solid bit.
And we're introduced with my favorite character, who happens to be Robin Hood in this episode. I think the guy who plays Robin Hood is amazing. He's so funny. I love everything that he does, and the banter between the two of them, perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. The best part of this episode is the jokes between the Doctor and Robin Hood, because this Doctor does not get along with Robin Hood at all. Robin Hood is very jovial, he has his merry men, and the Doctor is not about that. He is upset that they laugh so much, and it's funny. We get a fight scene, actually, between the Doctor and Robin Hood where he pulls out a spoon instead of a sword.
It's the worst part of the episode, in my opinion.
And here's the thing. I knew after I watched this episode that this episode was going to split people down the middle, because I myself am pretty split on it in different aspects, and this scene with the sword-spoon fight kind of encapsulates everything that is right and wrong with this episode.
Yeah.
In one hand, fun. It's a very fun episode that just wants to be a filler episode that shows the Doctor doing a fun romp. But at the same time, after we just got done with the Doctor in the last episode, very poignant, thinking about, is he a good man? Now we have him sword fighting with a spoon, which I don't have a problem with. I'm not one of those people who say, Doctor Who has to be serious. There can never be just silly moments. Of course there can be silly moments, but he is fighting Robin Hood with a spoon.
Yeah, he has the world's strongest wrist, obviously, so...
But I would like to point out that the spoon, I don't know if this is an intentional reference. I don't want to be those people who read into everything too deep, but for me at least, it made me think of the Seventh Doctor and his spoons that he would play occasionally. Actually reminds me of it too, because it's actually kind of a weird big spoon.
It's a gigantic spoon. It's almost like for casseroles.
Yeah, I know.
But he's eating yogurt with it at the beginning.
After that, we get a scene of the Sheriff of Nottingham, who is the bad guy of the episode, going and kidnapping a woman and taking some gold. And he basically says, "We don't need your jewels, old man. We only want gold. I am the villain. I have a beard. Haha." And he's a pretty standard villain. He's not notable in any way, really.
The best part about the intro part is meeting the merry men right after that.
Yeah. The interaction, again, between the Doctor and Robin Hood is very interesting, especially at the beginning, because the Doctor believes that Robin Hood isn't real. He's a robot or something, because he can't possibly be real. So he does some blood samples and stuff of the merry men.
Taking hair.
One of them, he says, "Oh, look at all these diseases. If you were real, you'd be dead in 6 months." So that guy's gonna die, apparently. But the Doctor doesn't believe that they're real. He makes a reference to the third Doctor episode, the Carnival of Monsters, actually, where the Doctor's trying to figure out what's going on, and he says, "They're not holograms, they're not they look human. Maybe we're in a mini-scope." In the third Doctor episode they were in. a mini scope, which is a little miniature environment with little characters in it. So solid reference. Lots of references to classic Who this season so far. I hope that trend continues because it's nice to have those little things. And then we discover that there's an archery contest, and if you're familiar with the Robin Hood mythos, that is something that happens in all the stories. There's an archery contest, and Robin Hood is famous for splitting the arrow of the Sheriff of Nottingham and winning the contest. However, in this version, after he does split the arrow, the Doctor shows up with his own bow and arrow and splits that arrow, basically because he's an asshole, which is why I love Capaldi so much as the Doctor so far.
Yeah, and kind of the point is, you know, how the Doctor always has to put himself in the center of the conflict so he can learn everything there is about it and take care of it. But if Robin Hood wins, he can't. So they go back and forth, and basically they split arrows like 6 or 7 times. It's crazy. Yeah. And, of course, the Doctor ends up winning. He doesn't even care about the golden arrow as the prize, throws it aside, gets taken, and now Clara, Robin Hood, and the Doctor are, like, shackled together in a prison, which is my second favorite scene of the entire episode.
This is definitely one of my favorite scenes as well. It's very funny. You get the conversations between the Doctor and Robin, and their competitive nature, because I think they both want to kind of be Clara's hero, in a sense. It's very funny.
And a really good part about that scene is that Clara's not taking any of their shit. She's basically like, we stop arguing with each other now. It's, can we pay attention? Let's take care of this situation. All the while, there's a guard outside, and he comes in and says, "Ha-ha, I was waiting outside to find out who the leader of the group was."
And both the Doctor and Robin Hood expect that they're going to be taken, but of course, lo and behold, comic relief, Clara is thought to be the leader, so she's taken to the sheriff for questioning.
Yep.
She then basically gets him to espouse his plan. He talks about how he got the knights, who are, as were revealed a little bit ago, robots, crash-landed their spaceship, and got the sheriff to try and help them, and promised, hey, if you help us get to where we're going with our spaceship, we'll help you conquer your planet.
And the way he's achieving this is he's collecting all the gold, and as you know, gold is a good conductor of electricity, so basically that's why the rubies and shit aren't really valuable to them, and they just want gold. And you see later they're taking people to like a labor camp underneath the castle/spaceship, and they're smelting down gold and making giant circuit boards out of it, so in an effort to get the ship up into orbit so they can leave.
Meanwhile, the Doctor is back in the cell with Robin Hood. They devise a plan to escape, do the whole sick prisoner bit. They knock out the guards, steal the keys, almost, but because of their competitive nature, they knock them down a drain, which, again, funny. They then take the post that they're both tied to and just carry it around in an attempt to try and unshackle themselves. They do find a door, however, that leads into the spaceship part of the castle, and it is revealed that the castle itself is actually a spaceship that is disguised as a castle. The Doctor looks at the memory banks of the computer. It says their destination was the Promised Land. So again, we have a reference to Missy in the Promised Land from the previous episode. We'll discuss that at the end of the episode, as we usually do. He also discovers that the memory banks are full of lore, and Robin Hood is included, so he basically deduces that this Robin Hood is fake. He is working with the bad guys because in order to use the people as a slave labor force, they need some sort of hope, and that hope is Robin Hood that they created. And that's what the Doctor believes until the end of the episode. So the Sheriff of Nottingham comes in. Clara is taken by Robin Hood. They both escape. The Doctor is captured, however, and he is locked up in the labor camp with the woman who we saw captured earlier.
As the Doctor does, he quickly formulates a plan. It's like, hey, we could use all this gold and defend ourselves as a really good reflector. We could defend ourselves against the forehead lasers of the night robots. And they do. Yeah. It's a little hokey. I mean, you get it. It was kind of going that way anyway. It's kind of one of those episodes.
Mm-hmm. Then we cut back to the place where the Merry Men and Robin Hood were staying. Clara wakes up basically after she was knocked out. Robin Hood says to her, "The Doctor seems to know a bunch about me. You need to tell me what's going on."
And it seems a little ominous. Like, is she going to get tortured, or is she going to get interrogated intensely? He seems very upset. Cut away.
Yeah, nothing comes of it, though, so it's kind of pointless, but whatever. So, as the Doctor does escape, the Sheriff of Nottingham comes in right after he defeats all the robots and tries to exposit yet again to the Doctor, but the Doctor isn't having any of it.
Yep.
The Doctor basically says, "Where's Clara?" And the Sheriff says, "Why would I know where Clara is?" And he says, "Robin Hood took her. I know Robin Hood's on your side. He's a robot, right?" And the guy's like, "No, that doesn't make sense." And the Doctor goes, "Oh yeah, that doesn't make sense, does it?" Cut to Robin Hood showing up, and the Doctor goes, "No, it can't be. He's a legend." And, Robin Hood comes down, sword fight. This is actually interesting to note. There was a scene that was cut from the episode in which, during the sword fight with Robin Hood, the Sheriff of Nottingham's head is chopped off. It is then revealed that he was actually part robot too, because when the alien spaceship crashed, it crashed on him, and they rebuilt him as a robot.
But they didn't put this through because ISIS? If you're not familiar with ISIS, it's a radical Islamic group that's been beheading a lot of people recently, so they're like, PC, maybe we shouldn't behead someone just right now, even if it is a robot. So, whatever. I get it. It's a good PR move, I suppose. It's a little bit more flaky when, shortly after that, Robin Hood tosses him into the big smelting pot and he dies.
Yeah.
So it's a little more morbid without him knowing that he's a robot.
Yeah.
So instead of having like Terminator ending, you have dead guy in like really hot molten metal ending.
So Alien 3 ending. Or Alien 2. Was it Alien 2? Whatever. One of those.
Remember.
You know what we're talking about. The spaceship's about to take off. The Doctor, Robin Hood, and Clara and all of his merry men leave. The spaceship's about to go, but the Doctor explains they don't have enough gold in their systems and it's gonna blow up the entire country. So in the dumbest conclusion to an episode of Doctor Who I've seen since Love and Monsters, we have the Doctor taking the golden arrow that was supposed to be a prize, him, Robin Hood, and Clara shoot the arrow at the spaceship, it hits the side of the spaceship, and somehow this adds enough fuel for the spaceship to get into orbit before it explodes.
This is not a good thing. This is not well done. This is poorly written. Mark Gatiss... Why?
He's so much better than this, too, which is why
know.
it confuses me. He's written great episodes of Sherlock.
I
How
know.
can he do this?
I don't know. And don't get me wrong, I get it. I think making the golden arrow important is good, but that is not how you do it. You make it like, oh, we gotta like shove it in there and make it conduct better. Like that's what's wrong with.
And that would have been fine. Have it hit a window, go into the ship, and go into something.
I'd rather they didn't shoot
fine.
it at all, personally, but.
But they shoot it and it hits the side. We see it hit the side of the ship and somehow it adds fuel. And I'm not just speculating. Before it shot, the robots, the computer says,
they say
the fuel is at 83%, not enough. And then when the arrow hits, it says critical power surge, and it's enough. So somehow the power of this golden arrow has gone from the side of the ship to the inside. Now, bear in mind when we're saying this, I did enjoy most of the episode. It's just that this ending is so poorly written, it really bugs me. And again, it's a fun episode of Doctor Who, but even in a fun episode, they could have taken probably 10 minutes and rewritten that ending just a little bit.
You mean there's not one person in the writing room that goes, Mr. Gatiss, that is awful.
Yeah, I know, right? But anyway, that happens. The world is saved. Woohoo, Doctor Who saves the day again.
Yeah. But I do like the very final scene.
The final scene is actually really excellent, and it gets into the theme of the season, which is basically, what is the Doctor? Is he a good man? What is a good man? And the Doctor has a final conversation with Robin Hood, and Robin says to him,
Is it true, Doctor?
Is what true?
That in the future I am forgotten as a real man. I am but a legend.
I'm afraid it is.
Good. History is a burden. Stories can make us fly.
And that's a really great line, and I like that's well written. That is very well written.
I think he kind of redeemed himself just a little bit right at the end, because it's very poignant for something that was an otherwise silly episode, and I don't know, it kind of gives you a little insight into what the Doctor is like going with right now in his own head.
Yeah.
And it does turn out that Robin Hood is real.
Yeah, he was not a robot, so that's kind of neat. And they draw comparisons between the Doctor and Robin Hood, and Robin Hood calls the Doctor a hero. The Doctor says, I'm not a hero. Robin Hood says back to him, I'm not either, but if we keep pretending to be, then maybe others will be heroes in our name. And that's a nice line.
It is.
It's good.
I like it. I like the message of it, too, especially because, as we've learned throughout the seasons of Doctor Who, people do fight for him just because he's him.
Yeah. And then we get our next week, but we'll talk about that at the end. Overall, I thought it was a pretty good episode.
Yeah.
Definitely had some downfalls in the writing, but I thought
Most
as far as a filler episode that basically was there for comedy, it did a good job. It had funny jokes. I genuinely enjoyed the banter between the Doctor and Robin Hood a lot.
I think all the jokes worked, and it wasn't like Like, recently we've just been getting Strax jokes.
Right.
So it's really nice to get a new character who is extremely likable almost immediately and can match wits with the Doctor and stubbornness. Really, if it had a better ending, a better conclusion to that, besides the arrow, I think it would be the best episode of the season so far.
I would agree. I also think a different ending, and I get that the spoon thing is supposed to be funny, but give him an actual sword and have a real sword fight, that could have been a really good scene, but instead it comes off a little awkward.
In Tennant's first episode, he had a
I know,
sword
it's
fight.
not unheard of, but whatever, small nitpicks overall. The 12th Doctor is having a very good run so far.
Oh, yeah.
But before we go, we do need to talk about two things. Firstly, there is a little bit of an allusion to the Promised Land and Missy and all that in this episode.
Yeah.
As we said, the robots, their course was set in for the Promised Land.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it actually has to do with the fact that they are robots, like the Clockwork Droids, but maybe the Promised Land is a robot thing?
It seems right now it's just robots and droids, but it might turn into other
Well,
stuff.
the woman in the last episode, the soldier red shirt, was taken too, but she
didn't mention the Promised Land, though,
she
did she?
wasn't planning on going there.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So
we could be proven wrong in later episodes, but as of now, it seems like a robot droid thing. And before we actually leave you, let's talk a little bit about next week. The next week looks so good, and if you guys may or may not know, scripts leaked, and people have been saying who read them that it is supposed to be the best episode so far. So
I'm really excited for it. The teaser in it is very intriguing. You see a little pink. You see just a bunch of stuff. It looks kind of like most recent seasons. Matt Smith had a lot of spooky episodes, kind of like with the Silence and with the Angels and all that. Kind of reminds me of the Impossible Astronaut episode where they start writing on themselves. It seems like it's going to be nice and dark like that. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited.
I think it'll be great. So I'm excited for that. So I guess we'll talk about that next week. Until next time, I'm Hugo.
And I'm Jake.
And this has been Who Cares?
I don't know. Who cares?